Hi, folks. Welcome to the second episode of Serverless Craic with self, Dave Anderson, author at the Serverless Edge and technical fellow for Bizarre Voice. I'll let the two gentlemen introduce themselves.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike O'Reilly, architect at Globalization Partners and contributor to the Serverless Edge.
Mark McCann, author, contributor at Serverless Edge. Currently not working for anybody, so letting the lads do the heavy lifting here.
Ooh.
You've got the real job. It's like looking after the wins.
Looking after the kids.
All right, so figured we'd talk about Map Camp this week. I presented at Simon Wardley and the Wardley Mapping community have an event they've been doing this past couple of years called Map Camp, and I presented was last week now. So it was an interesting days, lots of really good feedback on Twitter, etc. I did a presentation on it was part of the resilience track, and the title of our session was Adaptation. And then I mapped the Value Flywheel, but it kind of in a idea of great stupidity, I said the live map, so that kind of worked quite well. But it was good to kind of present. For me, it was about presenting on adaptation using the Value Flywheel idea from the book. So that seemed to go down well.
Yeah, it definitely resonated. I've seen lots of people taking pictures of it and sharing it and stuff. So it was good to see it.
No, I thought that was a bit of a masterstroke in relation to the mapping pit, because I think when you're in the office, all the maps are on the walls, aren't they? Like, you're normally getting people around, a whiteboard, and you're talking about a problem, and you're talking about like position and movement and sort of placement, and then you've got the photograph, and then what you do is you take the photograph and then digitize it. Whereas like the tooling and where we are now, we're all at home, and a lot of the collaboration sessions are digital, and and I think that's probably got, like, I'd be surprised, like, I mean, did you get any reaction? Like, how many people were leveraging something like VS Code for mapping? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of people that do it. I know there's a lot of online tools that are there that kind of, with Visual Lucid Chart, there's online Wardley Mapping, there's the VS Code. But certainly from sort of the feedback I'm seeing is a lot of people were kind of going, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of accelerated that process, or you modernize it slightly. So I mean, I'm sure there was that element to it,
Yeah, I think the first time I seen somebody live mapping was Adrian Cockcroft doing it. It was last year at Map Camp, maybe.
Yeah.
Cool. But it's a great technique. I think it's definitely a bit more popular. But I think a lot of people were having that, that's really interesting. That's a really good technique. And I think one of the challenges we had early, Dave, when we were talking or using it, was that it kind of forces you to go a bit too formal too quickly. But I think now we've got over we know how to use the tools properly, and we know how to keep the conversation going. It's actually not getting in the way as much as something like Miro or Lucid Chart or whatever was much more informal, and you could drag stickies around and stuff. So I think it's definitely coming into its own now.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if anyone is interested in that tool, its Twitter handle is Maps as Code. It's like a little language for doing your maps. It's the same engine behind online Wardley Maps. There's a guy called Damien Skellhorn wrote that. I think it's all on GitHub and stuff. But there's a nice plugin for Visual Studio Code, which works really well. But if you don't want to do that, which not everyone wants to install an IDE, you just go to onlinewardleymaps.com and just go and play about with it. Initially we thought it was too formal, but I think it works well. And plus, you can give someone the code and they can play with it themselves, which is good.
Big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way you've used it in this talk was brilliant, about uncommenting as you went and using it to really illustrate the narrative and illustrate your content, which was awesome.
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, it's probably worth showing the map itself. The map, what's kind of, I wouldn't say. Well, there was original map, which was this one here. Probably worth touching on first. This wasn't my map. This is one of Simon's maps. Simon's been using this map. Simon Wardley's been using the map for a long time to talk about the evolution of cloud up into serverless. And it's kind of, I think, what do you reckon, Mark? This is at least 5 years old, at least.
Yeah, it's a fair while.
He talks about, I'll just talk through this really quickly, and you can see there, if anyone doesn't know Wardley Map, the anchor is at the top of the user, and then you have these 4 phases: Genesis, which is kind of brand new, custom built, which is just you can build something, but you're not quite sure how to replicate it. Product, you get good at building it, and it's ready for kind of prime time. And then commodity, it's the price of doing business. So very quickly, he talks about cloud or compute, moving over to cloud. And then there's the dependency there on DevOps, which will start to move to the right. This is good architectural practice. The operating system, and then the runtime. So he's saying there's an inertia point here at the runtime going to serverless, the second inertia point going to cloud. But once that happens over in serverless, that opens up something called emerging practice, which opens up new need or new value for the user. And often the user doesn't really know that they need this until it appears. But really, and there's a little pattern to this map that's been used quite a few times. Now, when Simon draws this map, he often will change what this need is. There's a couple of different needs he puts in here, but the pattern of this and the fact that serverless unlocks it, because you don't need to worry about a lot of this kind of stuff down here.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, like, and just clarifying there on the inertia point, Dave. So, like, when you look at this map, you're pretty much saying that, 5 years ago, like runtimes were slowing down the adoption of some of these emerging practices that we're kind of now starting to see, sort of affect the industry when it comes to, moving fast or sort of moving with, undifferentiated, reducing undifferentiated heavy lifting and kind of, time to market.
Yeah,
so
slowdowns
and blocks.
Yeah, I think we've seen this as we've been able to navigate through that inertia barrier in some of the work we've been doing, and it has, especially with serverless, and we have witnessed that it has opened up emerging practices. It has improved our time to value, our speed, and it has allowed us to think differently about what is the new emerging value, what is the new need that we can go and address as an organization, as a business, even individually. So, we have lived this map effectively,
totally.
over the past 6 or 7 years.
And worked with many, many very, very good engineers who are still stuck down at this inertia barrier down here. Yep. And, people may spend their entire career being stuck on that inertia barrier. Still have a successful career, but you spend an awful lot of time just trying to get over that, get burst through that wall. And sometimes it doesn't happen. So
you can see the title of this one's Serverless 2030. So these things take time, and there's lots of inertia to change. There's lots of legs and all the old, not old, but a lot of the traditional practices and techniques, and there's lots of value in them as well. So it's not like throw everything out and go serverless. There's an evolutionary journey that people, teams, organizations need to go on to be able to grasp the value in the top left corner here.
Yeah. And really, the reason why I think this is interesting, why it was so valuable for us, is it's a higher level technical strategy. Your technical strategy isn't let's move the Lambda. It's it's right up the value chain. Is how can we reduce operational load to move faster so we can unlock those new needs. You know what I mean? So you have a higher lens, which is closer to your kind of business. That probably brings us nicely into the map itself. This is a kind of snapshot of the map I used for map camp. Again, the title of the track was Adaptation, the service side, the Value Flywheel. What do you think? Shall we talk through this?
Yeah, go for it.
So, I mean, the video itself is probably worth watching, but I'll give a quick 2 minutes. The whole idea, it's based on the innovate, leverage, commoditize, that kind of cycle. And the thing you often see happening is companies will innovate, they'll leverage value, but never get to commoditize, which leaves you kind of locked. And that's when you get into technical debt, we can't go fast, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
and often
they're prisoners to their past success. They can't get out of the way.
Yeah, no, exactly. So the way we anchored this map was a senior executive, say like a CEO, and this is a pattern seen many, many times. There's a layer across the top here, which is clarity of purpose. So things that maybe worry here: operational efficiency, time to value, business growth. They've got needs around cost management, digital modernization, customer need, even secure rapid experimentation. These are things that might be top of mind for CEO. This layer here is almost like the IT department, the technology leaders. So, okay, then if we need those things, we need self-service cloud, we need to be able to build quicker, we need better data, we need better security. These are things that you need to do in direct response to these. But really, what we've experienced is there's another layer of a goal, which is your problem prevention mindset. Things like well-architected engineering excellence, standardization, sustainability. They're the real things that no one asks for, but they actually enable a lot of this. Such a commoditized kind of phase, your long-term value. And then down at the bottom here, for us, the enabler for all of this is the idea of mapping, the idea of challenging to make sure there's movement. And really, the concept of the value flywheel is that there's clarity of purpose first. You challenge through your map, and you figure out your next best action, which is your leverage, and then you move things over into this long-term value, which then creates space for further innovation up at the top there. Yeah. That's everything, isn't it? That's a quick spiel through it.
Pretty much it, and underpinning it all is that environment for success, and it's very important. That's there. Psychological safety is a big thing that enables this to happen.
Yes.
It's very hard to challenge if you're going to get shared at every time you raise a question. So, there's a reason why that environment for success is one of those key elements there that underpins the entire flywheel.
Yeah, I think certainly the commoditized piece, I think that's definitely an interesting one to kind of go into. I always think of this one as, it's a scaling thing, so as you're moving with speed and you're kind of producing more and more kind of throughput potentially, and I'm not, and you say that you carry that over the longer term, but then you got to think about, well, teams move, and developers move and leaders move. But as they move, you should be able to go from one workload to another, and it should be reasonably consistent. You shouldn't want to be finding something that's not in a good state, or you're worried about making a change, or something's brittle, or can I really assess the impact of what I'm doing right now? And I think when you get into that and you kind of get everybody on a level playing field, there's an equilibrium there around expectations in terms of standards. We talk a lot about well architected, and that's a sort of almost like you could call it. Well, you could argue, is it a commoditized set of sort of best practices that get everybody aligned to? But if you get everybody working to that standard, you should be able to move with speed, and then that kind of really creates the foundations for things like SRE and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's certainly I certainly see where you went with that, Matt, Dave, and it definitely has a nice balance to it, in relation to moving responsibly and with a certain degree of rigor and discipline.
Yeah.
As well,
Yeah, and I think the key thing, the way you approach this, it's not a stick to beat teams with around problem prevention. It's about enabling and empowering them. It's about taking them on a collaborative journey.
Yeah,
and the whole mindset thing as well. I mean, the three of us worked together for 15 years.
Yeah.
For me, the commoditized box is interesting because I can't think of a time when we didn't have some mad idea of bringing in like threat modeling, whole team testing, some cloud strategy, like sustainability, some wacky idea. And as a technical leader, it's your remit to do that. People would say, "Well, why are we doing this?" And say, "Well, we need to do it." And it's like, "Well, remember, it's not my objectives." It's like, no, we need to do this because this is going to make everything else easier. And always the hard battle was to get something like this kicked off. As a technical lead, sometimes you have to just plant the flag and say, "No, we're doing this."
Yeah.
But then, if you a while in, when people start to see the benefit, it lifts a lot of cognitive load. But as a technical lead, it's your job to assess when the organization is ready for that change. Because if you push something when people aren't ready, it's difficult,
Yeah.
But then so it's very hard to describe. But I think as a technical leader, the trick is knowing when to push those things and connect them to the executive vision. That's there's a real knack in that, which I think a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, we love Gregor Hope's architect elevator architect approach, and I think we've a lot of scar tissue around how to articulate the things we're trying to do around problem prevention and long-term value, about selling it to the right levels in the right way, and getting the buy-in from the teams on the ground, getting the right pitch for the execs as well, and trying to do that across all the different floors of the elevator architect is is fun. But what it effectively does is drag a lot of this stuff over to the commoditized long-term value and frees up that space for your next thing, your innovation. And I think you got that in the map next, Dave.
Oh yeah, that's right. So I'll kind of scroll here a bit, and the way we kind of frame this, I'll not talk to all of this, is that when you start to move those things to the right, cloud self-service, even kind of serverless first brings a lot of these things across to the right. Then you free up space for enabling capability and whatever's next. So it was an interesting. It was nice. It'd be a nicer kind of visual to see the build and the actual video. But it definitely, a lot of people were kind of watching it and they didn't realize that what this really was serverless first, because you're using that serverless first kind of mindset to move things from the next best action into the long-term value zone, because you were able to move things quickly. There's some older architectures that could take a year to move stuff. You can do it faster with serverless. So that was interesting. And then I think there was a lot of discussion. I think a lot of people still think of serverless as Lambda.
Yeah.
And really serverless is it's a terrible name, but there's a phrase there about a modern way of building software in the cloud that I don't think it's been coined yet.
Mhm.
And I think it really lends itself well to that problem prevention mindset.
Yeah, it's all the enabling capabilities, the building blocks to allow you to go after the next thing, to go after that value is critical. And you can probably get by for a while not doing that, but sooner or later it'll catch up with you. And it'll catch up with you in a big way, a security issue or a massive cost overrun, or some quality issue, or just a slowdown in your time to value. So like a lot of this, and we seen this, we wanted to invest in this a lot so that our teams could go fast. Our teams could have a good environment to work in.
The three big ones that you always see in the news are big security breach,
yep,
massive cost, or reliability, something falls over. And those rarely happen in isolation. There usually is a knock-on effect, because people haven't drawn out this type of strategy here and given engineers room to practice well architected techniques.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like, I think what you can see sometimes, particularly, is, clouds move away from, companies move away from sort of traditional ways of kind of, modes of architecture,
Agile. We're agile now. We don't need architecture.
Yeah, and really what you're saying there, I think to kind of get across, like, the big thing sort of to move, I think, there from, through that evolution, through sort of product into sort of commodity, is going to be observability and visibility of certain things. You know what I mean? So, like, how many times in the past have you been in where, like, a third-party consultants groups come in and quantified your technical debt for you and said, we need to invest all this here, this IT resource in moving from this platform to that platform, when actual fact, really, the correct thing to do would be, can we tie this sort of technical debt or this sort of legacy system to actual value? So if this thing's down for half an hour a month, is it really worth kind of investing all this time in sort of correcting these issues, or should we, do we invest that time in modernizing it and moving it into the next space, and then bringing it in line with, sort of future state, and getting ourselves more, capability there. So I think, like, certainly what I see with, in order to kind of do that and have that evolution, you need to start quantifying certain things, like, are you visible of the value that the system, the ROI of it, the performance of it, how long does it take you to make a change to it? For example, do you have the people to actually make a change to that system? That is also another side of it that people, don't factor in, like developer happiness. So all this stuff kind of factors in here, and once you kind of get that going, you've got your golden paths and that sort of consistency. It's certainly a good spot to be in.
Yeah, and I think like it's one of the things Jillian, my wife, says is serverless isn't easier, it's better. And like a lot of this stuff, it's not easy to do this. It's hard to do all this stuff, but it's a better way of doing it. It's a more sustainable, it's a more rewarding, a more impactful way of going about your day. And in fact, I've written a blog post this week around finding your why. There's a lot of our teams don't know. Well, historically, a lot of the teams didn't know how the thing that they were doing was going to impact, the bottom line, going to impact the business, going to impact their team. They were just working on tickets, right?
Yeah. And that's what I'm getting at. Like, if you don't understand what your system is doing and how it's actually adding value, you may come up with things like, we need to move from Spring to React and go single page apps into microservices. But if you don't understand the why, you don't know if that's a good decision or not. Should your time be spent elsewhere? Is there a quicker path to what you're trying to do? And I think that's serverless certainly gives you a platform for operating in that way, and not making those sort of blind decisions because it's we should.
I think the mapping that underpins this entire map here, the challenge is, like, whenever we started mapping out of all of our teams and mapping out their tech stack, the first question we would ask our teams is, what's your purpose? Why does this team exist? Yeah. Do you know? Do you care? And it was always fascinating to see the various answers from a team of 10 or 12 people about why they think that team existed. It was always fascinating.
So that's the crack. So that's us then. So, like I said, we have our blog on the serverlessage.com, where we put a lot of writing stuff, and we've got at Serverless Edge on Twitter and the Serverless Edge on LinkedIn. So a lot of the thoughts and stuff we're talking about we'll reshare quite generously on those channels, and we're writing a book about this stuff with IT Revolution, due to be out next year in 2022. So subscribe to the channel or give us a follow on the Serverless Edge at Serverless Edge. Twitter is probably the best place. We'll put everything out there. And that's us. Any more closing thoughts?
No, good stuff. It's amazing how much stuff happens in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's all movement.
All movement.
My head's constantly sore.
All right, folks. Have a good weekend.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheerio.